Millionaire returns to the house where he grew up, but what he finds there leaves him in shock. Julian Sterling hadn't been back to that place in 25 years. The 3-hour drive from New York City had been a torture of memories he preferred to keep buried. His lawyer had insisted it was necessary to personally settle the inheritance matters, to sign the documents for the sale of the rural property that had belonged to his parents. A simple formality that would free him forever from that past of poverty and suffering. But as he parked the black Tesla in front of the wooden house where he'd grown up, Julian felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. There was a woman standing on the porch, a scarf partially covering her dark hair, holding a small child in her arms. Beside her, another boy hid behind her skirts, watching with curiosity the elegant man in a blue suit who was getting out of the car holding a leather briefcase. "Excuse me," said Julian, adjusting his tie and walking toward the porch with firm steps. "You are on my property." The woman didn't move. Her dark eyes stared at him with a mixture of defiance and maternal protectiveness. "Your property," she repeated, holding the child tighter against her chest. "My name is Sarah Jenkins, and I've lived here for 3 years with my children." Julian opened the briefcase and pulled out a stack of documents. "I'm Julian Sterling, son of Arthur and Eleanor Sterling, the former owners of this house. I inherited this property when they passed, and I came here to settle the sale. You have no right to be here." "Right?" Sarah took a step forward, the older boy still clinging to her skirt. "When we arrived here, this house had been abandoned for years. Broken windows, weeds growing inside, a leaky roof. No one cared about it." "That doesn't give you the right to trespass on my property," Julian replied, trying to keep his voice controlled, but feeling a growing irritation inside. "Trespass?" Sarah shook her head. "We turned this house into a home. We fixed what was broken, planted a vegetable garden, took care of the land. By law, we have squatters' rights." Julian felt the blood rush to his head. The entire drive, he had mentally prepared himself to find the house empty, sign the papers, and leave. He never imagined he'd have to deal with squatters who, on top of that, knew their rights. "I don't care what you did here. This property is mine by inheritance, and I want you to leave immediately." "We have documents too," said Sarah, lifting her chin. 3 years of peaceful possession, utility bills in my name, registration at City Hall. We're not leaving." The older boy, who must have been about 7, came out from behind his mother and approached Julian. His large, curious eyes studied the man in the suit, the expensive briefcase, the gold watch on his wrist. "Did you know the old owners of the house?" the boy asked with the innocence of childhood. Julian looked at that child in simple clothes and bare feet. For a moment he saw himself at that same age, asking questions the adults didn't want to answer. "I did," he replied curtly. "Mommy says they were very good people. The lady who lived here painted pretty pictures. I like to draw too." Julian looked away. He didn't want to think about his mother, about the paintings she did in her spare time, using the few paints she could buy with the money left over from the market. "Leo, come here," called Sarah, extending her free hand to her son. "Don't bother the man." "He's not bothering," Julian said, surprised by his own words. He looked at the boy again. "What's your name?" "Leo Jenkins, and he's my brother Sam," he replied, pointing to the baby in his mother's arms. "How old are you?" "Leo," Sarah scolded, but Julian raised his hand. "I'm 42. "Wow, that's old," exclaimed Leo, drawing an involuntary smile from Julian. "Leo, apologize," said Sarah, visibly embarrassed. "No need. He's right. I am getting old." An uncomfortable silence settled among the adults. Julian observed the house that had once been his home. The wooden boards his father painted every year were well kept. The porch had been extended. There were flower pots in the windows. It no longer looked like the decaying house of his childhood. "You've done a good job with the renovations," he said, unable to hide a hint of acknowledgement. "Thank you," replied Sarah, relaxing her shoulders slightly. It wasn't easy. When we arrived, it was truly in a pitiful state. "How did you end up here?" Sarah hesitated before answering. "I was married. My husband worked for a freight company and died in a work accident. We were left with no home, no income, with 2 small children. Someone told me there were abandoned houses in the rural area where we could stay temporarily. Julian felt a tightness in his chest, hearing about the woman's husband, but quickly pushed away any feeling of compassion. He couldn't get emotionally involved in that situation. "I'm sorry for your loss, but that doesn't change the fact that this is my property." "Do you have a family, children?" asked Sarah. "No, and I don't see how that's relevant to our discussion." "It is relevant. There's a huge difference between someone who needs a home to raise children and someone who just wants to sell a property for money." Sarah's remark hit Julian like an arrow. That was exactly what he intended to do, sell the property and never think of that place again. "My reasons are none of your business. I'll give you 1 week to arrange another place." "1 week?" Sarah raised her voice, startling the baby. "You don't understand. We have nowhere to go. I work as a housekeeper in the city. I can barely cover basic expenses. It took me 3 years to make this house livable." "Then you should have thought of that before settling on someone else's property," Julian replied, but his own words sounded too harsh even to him. Leo, who had remained quiet watching the argument, approached Julian again. "Why don't you like the house where you grew up?" he asked with the cruel innocence of children. Julian looked at the boy, then at the house, then at Sarah, who was watching him with an expression mixing defiance and curiosity. "Because there are only bad memories here," he answered with more honesty than he intended. "But we can make good memories too," said Leo. "Do you want to see the drawings I made of the house?" Before Julian could answer, the boy ran into the house. Sarah watched him with worried eyes. "Leo, come back here." "Let him get the drawings," said Julian, surprised again by his own words. A few minutes later, Leo came running back with a notebook in his hands. He opened it to a page showing a pencil drawing of the house, with details surprisingly precise for a child his age. "Look, I drew our house," he said proudly. Julian took the notebook and examined the drawing. The lines were firm, the proportions correct. There were even details like the wood textures and the porch flowers. It was the work of someone with natural talent. "You drew this by yourself?" he asked, impressed. "Yes. Mom says I draw well. Look at this one." Leo turned the page, showing a portrait of Sarah holding Sam. The likeness was striking. "Leo has a special gift for drawing," said Sarah, approaching. "Since he was little, he's always scribbling on any paper he finds." Julian kept flipping through the notebook. There were drawings of animals, trees, people from the neighborhood, all executed with a precision and sensitivity that left him genuinely impressed. "Where did you learn to draw like that?" he asked the boy. "No one taught me. I just like doing it." Julian remembered his mother, the paintings she used to create. Could that talent be something that ran in the family of the house's former occupants? He shook his head, dismissing that ridiculous thought. "They're very good," he said, handing the notebook back to Leo. "But this doesn't change our situation." "Of course not," Sarah agreed, positioning herself defensively again. "But perhaps you could be a bit more understanding. We're not freeloaders. We're here because we need to be, and we take good care of this place." Julian looked around once more. Indeed, the property was well kept. The vegetable garden in the yard was lush and green. The fruit trees were pruned. Even the fence was repaired. "I need to think," he said finally. "I'll stay in town tonight. We'll talk again tomorrow." "There's no inn in town," said Sarah. "Only Mrs. Gable's guest house, but it closes at 7 in the evening." Julian looked at his watch. It was almost 8. "Then I'll have to go back to New York City tonight." "You can sleep here," Leo said suddenly. "We have a spare room." "Leo," Sarah exclaimed, clearly uncomfortable with her son's suggestion. "It's a good idea, Mom. That way he can see we take good care of the house." Julian looked at Sarah, who seemed torn between embarrassment and practical concern. "It wouldn't be proper," she said finally. "Why not?" insisted Leo. "He's the owner of the house, and it's almost night. It could be dangerous to drive in the dark." Julian thought about the long drive back to New York City, about the dangerous curves of the country road in the dark. The boy's offer, however strange the situation, made practical sense. "If you don't mind, I would accept staying one night. Of course, I'd pay for the lodging." "We don't want your money," Sarah said quickly. "If you stay, it will be as a guest." "Yay!" Leo clapped his hands. "I'll show you the room." Julian picked up his briefcase and a small travel bag he had left in the car. He followed Leo into the house, Sarah coming behind with Sam in her arms. The interior of the house was unrecognizable. The walls he remembered stained with dampness were painted in light colors. There were simple but well-kept furnishings, curtains on the windows, rugs on the floor. Everything was very clean and tidy. "This was the old owner's room," said Leo, opening the door to a small room. "Mum doesn't touch it much here. Says it's to respect their memory." Julian stopped at the bedroom door. That was where his parents had slept during all those difficult years. The bed was different, newer, but the arrangement of the furniture was almost the same. On the wall, a small mirror he recognized from childhood was still hanging. "Thank you," he said, entering the room and placing his bag on a chair. "Dinner will be ready in half an hour," Sarah said from the doorway. "I hope you like simple food." "Anything is fine." When he was alone, Julian sat on the bed and looked around. 25 years had passed since the last time he had been in that room. Memories began to surface against his will. The nights he heard his parents arguing about money, the cold mornings when there was no firewood for the stove, the Sundays when his mother painted her pictures at the kitchen table. A delicious smell came from the kitchen. Julian opened the window and saw the sun setting behind the mountains, painting the sky in orange hues. It was the same view he had in childhood, but now it seemed different, more beautiful somehow. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Mr. Julian." It was Leo's voice. "Dinner is ready. I'll be right there." Julian washed his hands in the small bathroom that had been renovated and went to the kitchen. The table was set with simple but clean plates. Sarah had prepared rice, beans, organic roast chicken, and greens from the garden. "Please have a seat," she said, indicating a chair. "I hope you're hungry." "I am, thank you." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Julian had to admit the food was delicious, much better than the sophisticated dishes from the expensive restaurants he frequented in New York City. "Mum cooks really well," said Leo, breaking the silence. "She learned from Grandma." "Is your grandmother still alive?" asked Julian. "No," Sarah answered softly. "She left us 5 years ago. She's the one who raised me after my parents died when I was a child." Julian felt a tightness in his chest. This woman had lost many important people in her life, and now he was there wanting to take her away from the only home she and her children had. "I'm sorry," he said sincerely. "Thank you. Life isn't easy for any of us, is it?" "No, it certainly isn't." After dinner, Sarah put Sam to sleep, while Leo showed more drawings to Julian in the living room. The boy had drawn practically everything he saw: the garden, the neighbors, even some animals from the area. "Have you ever thought about studying art?" asked Julian. "What's studying art?" "It's going to a special school where they teach you to draw and paint even better." Leo's eyes lit up. "That really exists? A school just for drawing?" "Yes, it exists. In big cities there are very good art schools." "That's so cool. Mom, did you hear that? There's a school just for drawing." Sarah returned from putting Sam to sleep and heard the end of the conversation. "That must be very expensive," she said realistically. "Some are, but there are scholarships for talented children," explained Julian. "Scholarships?" "It's when the school doesn't charge anything because the student is very good at what they do." Leo jumped from his chair, excited. "Mum, can I try, please?" "Leo, those are very big dreams for our reality," said Sarah gently. "First, you need to finish regular school." Julian observed the interaction between mother and son. It was clear Sarah didn't want to crush the child's dreams, but she also couldn't feed unrealistic hopes. "May I see a few more drawings?" he asked. Leo ran to get another notebook. Meanwhile, Sarah approached Julian. "Thank you for being kind to him. Leo doesn't have many people to talk to about drawing. He really has talent. It's rare to find a child with such natural ability. Do you understand art?" Julian hesitated. During his teenage years, he himself had dreamed of studying art. He drew constantly, mostly portraits of the neighbors and landscapes of the area. But poverty and the pressure to get work early on had buried those dreams. "They're little," he answered vaguely. Leo returned with another notebook, but this time there was something different. The first drawing showed a tall, well-dressed man standing in front of the house with a sad expression on his face. "When did you draw this?" asked Julian, intrigued. "This afternoon after you arrived." Julian studied the drawing more closely. Leo had captured not just his physical appearance, but something deeper. The melancholy expression, the rigid posture, even the way he held the briefcase like it was a shield. "Why did you draw me like this? Sad?" Leo shrugged. "It's what I saw. You looked sad when you were looking at the house." The child's observation hit Julian like a revelation. Was his sadness that obvious? "Leo is very observant," said Sarah. "Sometimes he says things that surprise me. Mom, can I draw Mr. Julian again?" But smiling this time. "If he doesn't mind." "I don't mind," said Julian, touched by the innocence of the request. While Leo drew, Sarah prepared lemon balm tea that she grew in her garden. They talked about simple things: the weather, the garden's harvest, the neighbors. Julian discovered that Sarah worked as a housekeeper in 3 different homes in the city to support her children. "That must be tiring," he commented. "It is, but at least it's honest work. And I can come home every day to be with the kids." "How long have you been working as a housekeeper?" "Since I arrived here. Before, when I was married, I helped my husband with the accounting at the freight company where he worked. But after he passed, I had to take whatever work I could find." Julian noticed how she spoke about the loss of her husband naturally, without self-pity. She was a strong woman who had faced adversity and kept going for the love of her children. "Done," announced Leo, showing the new drawing. This time Julian was smiling on the paper. Leo had imagined what his happy expression would look like and had drawn it with impressive accuracy. "It's very good," said Julian, genuinely impressed. "You really are very talented." "You look nicer when you smile," Leo said innocently. Julian laughed, a genuine laugh that hadn't come from his mouth in a long time. "Thank you. You look nicer when you smile too." Sarah watched the interaction between the businessman and her son with growing curiosity. There was something familiar in the way Julian treated Leo, as if he understood the child's artistic soul. "It's time for Leo to go to bed," she said, when she saw the boy yawning. "Oh, Mom, just a little longer." "No, just a little longer. You have school tomorrow." Leo obeyed resignedly, but before saying goodbye, he handed the drawing to Julian. "For you to keep as a memento." "Thank you, Leo. I'll treasure it." When the boy left, Sarah and Julian were alone in the living room. An awkward silence settled between them. "He liked you," Sarah said finally. "He's a special boy. You must be very proud of him." "I am. Of both of them. They're all I have left in life." Julian looked at the drawing in his hands. Leo had drawn him smiling, but he couldn't remember the last time he had truly smiled. "Can I ask a personal question?" said Sarah. "That depends on the question." "Why did you leave here? And why did you never come back?" Julian tensed up. It was exactly the question he didn't want to answer. "They're complicated matters," he said evasively. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to pry. It's strange to meet someone who grew up in this house and never speaks of it fondly. Not everyone has good memories of their childhood." Sarah seemed to understand she shouldn't press the matter. "I'll let you rest. Thank you for having dinner with us. It's been a while since we had a visitor." "Thank you for your hospitality. The food was excellent." "I'm glad you liked it. Good night, Mr. Julian." "Good night, Sarah. And you can just call me Julian." Alone in his parents' room, Julian had trouble falling asleep. The memories he had tried to suppress for so many years came back in waves. He remembered the cold, early mornings helping his father with the milking, the Sundays when the whole family went to church in town, the afternoons when his mother taught him to read, using the few magazines they could afford. Not everything had been bad. There had been moments of joy too, moments he had chosen to forget when he built his new life in New York City. But why had he chosen to keep only the bad memories? The sound of a child crying woke him in the middle of the night. It was Sam, the baby, who seemed to be bothered by something. Julian heard Sarah getting up to calm her son, softly murmuring a lullaby. The melody was familiar, very familiar. It was the same song his mother used to sing to him when he was little and had nightmares. Julian felt a lump in his throat upon recognizing the song he hadn't heard in decades. When the baby settled and silence returned to the house, Julian remained awake thinking about that strange coincidence. How did Sarah know that specific song? The next morning he woke to the smell of coffee and homemade bread. He dressed quickly and went to the kitchen, where he found Sarah preparing breakfast while Sam played on the floor and Leo drew at the table. "Good morning," she said, smiling. "I hope you slept well." "I did, thank you." "Good morning, Leo." "Good morning, Uncle Julian," the boy replied cheerfully. Julian stopped. "Uncle?" No one had called him that in a long time. "Leo, call him by his name," Sarah corrected. "It's fine," Julian said quickly. "You can call me Uncle if you want." Breakfast was pleasant. Sarah had made cornbread, farmer's cheese, and fresh drip coffee. Everything homemade and delicious. "Did you hear Sam crying last night?" Julian asked Sarah. "I did. Sorry if he woke you. He's still teething." "It didn't bother me, but I recognized the song you sang to calm him." Sarah paused with her cup halfway to her mouth. "What song?" "Hush, little baby, don't say a word. My mother used to sing that to me when I was little." "It's a very well-known lullaby," Sarah said quickly, but Julian noticed she had become slightly uncomfortable. "Yes, of course. It's just that I hadn't heard it in a long time." After breakfast, Julian announced he needed to return to New York City to resolve some legal matters related to the property. "Are you coming back?" asked Leo, clearly sad about the departure. "Yes, I am. In a few days." "Promise?" "I promise." In truth, Julian wasn't sure if he would return. His intention was to settle everything through lawyers and never set foot in that place again. But something in Leo's hopeful expression made him make that promise. During the trip back to New York City, Julian couldn't stop thinking about the family he had found in his old home. Leo with his impressive drawings, Sarah with her quiet strength, even baby Sam with his innocent smiles. But mostly, he thought about how he had felt that one night. For the first time in years, he had eaten a family dinner, talked about simple things, laughed genuinely. It was a feeling he had forgotten existed. In New York City, Julian buried himself in work trying to forget the experience. But Leo's drawings remained in his briefcase, and every time he saw them, he felt a tightness in his chest. A week passed. Julian had not returned to the property nor called with any news. He tried to convince himself that the best thing to do was to settle everything legally, without further emotional involvement. It was then that his lawyer called him for an urgent meeting. "Julian, we have a problem with the property," said Mr. Henderson, an elderly man with thick glasses. "I did a more detailed search of the documents, and I discovered some irregularities." "What kind of irregularities?" "Your property was mortgaged by your father in 1998. He used the house as collateral for a loan that was never repaid." Julian felt the floor drop out from under him. "What do you mean? My parents never told me about a mortgage." "Apparently, it was after you left home. The loan was made at a local bank branch, and when your father couldn't pay, the bank called in the debt. The property was auctioned in 2001. "Auctioned? So I'm not the owner?" "Not on paper, but here's where the situation gets interesting. The auction buyer never took actual possession of the property. And according to my research, he died in 2003 without clear heirs." "What does that mean?" "It means the legal situation of the property is extremely complicated. The family living there may indeed have squatters' rights." Julian ran a hand through his hair, feeling lost. "And now? What can I do?" "We need to go there in person, talk to this family, examine the documents they claim to have. Only then can we determine the real situation." "Can you go alone?" "It would be better if you came along. After all, you know the people involved." Julian thought of Leo, of Sarah, of the promise he had made to the boy. Perhaps it was fate forcing him to return to that place. "All right, let's go tomorrow." The next morning, Julian and Mr. Henderson made the trip to the property. The whole way, Julian felt a strange anxiety, as if he were returning home after a long journey. When they arrived, Leo was playing in the yard with a mutt that hadn't been there the week before. "Uncle Julian!" the boy shouted, running to hug his legs. "You came back. I knew you'd come back." The child's genuine joy warmed Julian's heart in a way he hadn't expected. "Of course I came back. I made a promise, didn't I?" Sarah appeared on the porch holding Sam, who had grown noticeably in just a week. "Mr. Julian," she said, looking surprised but visibly relieved, "we didn't expect you to return. I brought my lawyer, Mr. Henderson. We need to talk about the property situation." Sarah's smile vanished immediately. "I understand. Please, come in." They all sat in the small living room. Mr. Henderson explained the property's legal situation, talking about the mortgage and the foreclosure auction. Sarah listened to everything in silence, her lips pressed tight. "May I see the documents you have?" the lawyer asked. Sarah went to fetch a folder with papers. There were utility bills, proof of residence, registration with City Hall, and some documents Julian hadn't expected to see. "This is the proof of purchase for the property," said Sarah, handing over a yellowed paper. Mr. Henderson examined the document, and his face turned pale. "Where did you get this?" "My husband bought the house at the 2001 auction. But he passed away before we could move here." Julian felt as if he'd been punched in the stomach. "Your husband bought my old home?" "Yes. He knew it was a special place, that it had belonged to a good family. We always dreamed of moving here and raising our children in the country." "But you only came in 2018. "Because it took me 17 years to gather the courage. After my husband passed, I thought about selling the property. But when things got too difficult in New York City, I remembered we had this house." Julian looked at Mr. Henderson, who was still examining the documents with a perplexed expression. "So she really is the owner of the house?" he asked. "Yes, legally and legitimately. Her husband bought the property at the judicial auction, paid the full amount, all taxes are up to date. This family aren't squatters, Mr. Julian. They are the legal owners." The silence in the room was deafening. Leo played on the floor with some improvised toys, oblivious to the adults' tension. "I'm sorry," Sarah said finally. "I know this must be painful to discover, but when we arrived here, we truly thought the house was abandoned." Julian looked around the room at the simple but well-kept furniture, the clean curtains, Leo's drawings hanging on the wall. That family had turned his old house into a real home. "You don't need to apologize," he said softly. "You have every right to be here." "What will you do now?" asked Sarah, worried. Julian didn't know what to answer. His entire life had been built on the idea that he had left behind a past of poverty and suffering. Discovering he no longer had any legal ties to that place should have been a relief. So why did he feel so lost? "I don't know," he admitted. "I need to think." Mr. Henderson put away the documents and prepared to leave. "The situation is legally clarified," he said. "The property belongs to Mrs. Sarah and her children. There is nothing more to discuss legally." After the lawyer's departure, an awkward silence settled in the house. Julian remained seated in the living room, looking at his own hands. "You can stay for lunch," said Sarah hesitantly. "If you want to, of course. I don't want to be a bother." "It's no bother. Leo was so happy when he saw you came back." As if he had heard his name, Leo approached Julian with a new drawing. "Look what I drew for you." It was a portrait of Julian, Sarah, Leo and Sam together in front of the house, everyone smiling like a family. "Why did you draw us together?" asked Julian, touched by the child's innocence. "Because I liked it when you were here. The house felt happier." Julian looked at Sarah, who seemed equally touched by her son's drawing. "Leo, why don't you go see if the chickens laid eggs for lunch?" she suggested. "Can I, Mommy? Can I show the chicken coop to Uncle Julian? If he wants to see—" "Of course I want to." Julian followed Leo to the back of the house, where there was a small, well-kept chicken coop. The boy knew each chicken by name and talked to them as if they were his friends. "This one is Pearl, she's the one that lays the most eggs. And this is Ginger, she's a bit feisty, but I like her anyway." While Leo collected the eggs, Julian observed the property with new eyes. The vegetable garden was green and well-tended. There was a small area with fruit trees, even a hammock for Leo to play in. This wasn't just a house. It was a home built with love and dedication. "Uncle Julian, "Can I ask a question?" said Leo, when they finished collecting the eggs. "Of course. Why did you take so long to come back home?" The child's question hit Julian like a well-aimed arrow. How could he explain to a 7-year-old boy the traumas and resentments of an entire lifetime? "Sometimes people get lost along the way," he replied, "and they forget what really matters." "But now you've found your way back?" Julian looked at the boy with his bright, curious eyes and felt something shift inside his chest. "Maybe. I'm still trying to understand." During lunch, Julian observed the family's dynamic. Sarah was a loving but firm mother. Leo was an intelligent and sensitive child. Sam was a healthy and cheerful baby. It was a small but close-knit family that had found happiness in difficult circumstances. "May I ask a personal question?" he said to Sarah when Leo went out to play in the yard. "Of course. What was your husband like, the man who bought this house?" Sarah smiled for the first time since the legal matter had been clarified. "He was a good man, a dreamer, hard-working, passionate about his family. He always talked about giving a better life for the children, about raising them in the country, far from the violence of the city." "Did he know about this house's history? About the family that lived here?" "He knew a little. What he could find out at the time of the auction, he said he could feel it had been a house of good people, hard-working people like us." Julian felt a lump in his throat. That unknown man had bought his childhood home and had dreamed exactly the same dreams he himself had had in childhood. A simple life, a close family, happiness in the small things. "How did you meet?" "We worked at the same freight company. He was a driver. I handled the administrative side. We fell in love and built our dreams together. He died in a work accident, you said?" "Yes." "The truck skidded on a curve during a heavy rain. It was 4 years ago." Julian did a quick mental calculation. 4 years ago, he had invested heavily in the transportation sector, buying several small companies and restructuring their operations. Could it be that... "What was the name of the company?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral. "Continental Freight." "Why do you ask?" Julian's blood ran cold. Continental Freight had been one of his acquisitions in 2020. He vaguely remembered reports about a fatal accident, about safety questions with the vehicles, about compensation paid to the families. "Just curiosity," he lied, feeling nauseated. The afternoon passed slowly. Julian played with Leo in the backyard, helped Sarah with some minor repairs around the house, even held Sam in his arms when the baby got fussy. It was as if he were experiencing a life he'd never had, the life of a family man, of a man connected to his roots. But the discovery about the company weighed on his conscience like a stone. Could he be indirectly responsible for the loss that family had suffered? When night fell, Sarah invited him to stay again. "I can't abuse your hospitality," he said. "It's not abuse. Leo is so happy when you're here, and to be honest, I enjoy the adult company too." "Don't you have friends in the area?" "A few acquaintances, but nothing very close. When you're a single mother and new in town, people are wary." Julian decided to stay one more night. During dinner, Leo asked 1,000 questions about his life in New York City, about the tall buildings, about the cars, about what it was like to work in business. "I want to see New York City one day," said the boy. "It must be very different from here." "It is different, bigger, busier, with more opportunities, but also colder, more lonely." "Lonely how?" Julian thought about the question. How to explain to a child that he had spent years building a life of professional success, but of emotional emptiness? It's just that, in the big city, everyone is always rushing, always busy. People don't stop to talk, to get to know each other. It's not like here where you know all the neighbors. "I wouldn't like to live in a place where people don't talk," said Leo decisively. "Neither would I," agreed Julian, surprising himself with the sincerity of his answer. That night, lying again in his parents' room, Julian couldn't sleep. Memories of childhood mixed with guilt over the possible connection to the company where Sarah's husband had worked. He decided he needed to investigate that situation better. If he really had any responsibility in the tragedy that had struck that family, he would have to find a way to make amends. The next morning, after breakfast, Julian announced he needed to return to New York City once more. "But will you come back again?" asked Leo, already accustomed to the departures and returns. "Yes, I will, and next time I'll stay longer." It was a promise he made without exactly knowing how he would keep it, but one that came from the heart. During the trip back, Julian called his assistant and asked him to pull all documents related to the acquisition of Continental Freight in 2020, including accident reports, safety investigations, and compensation amounts paid. In New York City, he dove into the documents like a detective, and what he discovered confirmed his worst fears. Continental Freight was in serious financial trouble when he bought it. The fleet was old, poorly maintained. The drivers worked in precarious conditions. Julian had implemented a restructuring program that included cost-cutting, staff reductions, and increased productivity. The accident that killed Sarah's husband had happened during a night trip on a dangerous road with a truck that was overdue for maintenance. The investigation report pointed to company negligence regarding vehicle safety and excessive driver hours. Julian had personally approved the settlement with the widow, an amount that at the time seemed fair to him, but which he now realized was insufficient for a woman to raise 2 children alone. The discovery tormented him for days. He was indirectly responsible for the tragedy that had destroyed the life of the family, now occupying his old home. Fate seemed to be playing a cruel trick on him. But perhaps it was an opportunity for redemption. Julian made a decision that would change his life forever. He asked his majority partner to take over the daily management of the business and announced he would take an indefinite leave. "Have you gone mad?" asked the partner. "We're in the middle of important negotiations. I have urgent personal matters to resolve." "What personal matters? You have no family, no personal life. Your life is the business." The partner's words echoed in Julian's mind for days. It was true. He had built a financial empire but had no real life. He had no family, no true friends, no passions beyond work. Perhaps it was time to change that. A week later, Julian returned to the property. This time not with a briefcase and documents, but with a different proposal. "I want to form a partnership with you," he said to Sarah, while Leo played on the floor and Sam slept in her lap. "What kind of partnership?" "I want to invest in the property, transform it into a sustainable project that can generate income for you, and at the same time give me an opportunity to reconnect with my roots." Sarah looked at him suspiciously. "I don't understand. What kind of project?" "Organic farming, rural tourism, perhaps an art studio to develop Leo's talent, something that honors the history of this land and, at the same time, creates a better future for all of us." "Why would you do that? You don't even really know us." Julian took a deep breath. It was time to be completely honest. "Because I discovered I am indirectly responsible for the tragedy you suffered. The company your husband worked for belonged to me when the accident happened." Sarah paled and held Sam tighter against her chest. "What?" "Continental Freight was one of the companies in my group. I bought it in 2020 and implemented changes that indirectly contributed to the accident that took your husband's life." Sarah stood up abruptly, causing Sam to wake up and start crying. You are responsible for the loss of my husband." "Not directly, but the policies I implemented created the conditions that led to the accident." "Get out of my house," she said, her voice trembling with anger and pain. "Sarah, please, let me explain." "Get out. Get out now." Leo, frightened by his mother's tone, began to cry too. Sam wailed in Sarah's arms, who was shaking with emotion. "Sarah, I came here to try to repair the harm I caused." "Nothing can repair what you did. Nothing can bring my husband back." Julian felt as if he had been stabbed in the heart. The pain in Sarah's eyes was unbearable. "You're right," he said quietly. "Nothing can repair it, but I can try to help you build a better future." "We don't want your help. We don't want anything from you." Julian looked at Leo, who was watching him with big, confused eyes, not understanding why the adults were fighting. "All right," he said, picking up his briefcase. "I'll leave, but if you ever change your minds, you know where to find me." He left the house heartbroken. hearing the children's cries and Sarah's sobs. He had tried to do the right thing, but had only made everything worse. On the trip back to New York City, Julian cried for the first time in decades. He cried for the loss of a family that had never even been his. He cried for the guilt he would carry forever. He cried for the empty life he had built. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. 2 weeks passed. Julian tried to return to the normal routine of business, but he couldn't concentrate. All the meetings seemed empty, all the contracts seemed insignificant. His mind was always on that wooden house, on those sad eyes of Sarah, on Leo's innocent smile. That's when he received an unexpected call. "Hello? Mr. Julian?" It was a child's voice. "Leo? How did you get my number?" "I got it from Mommy's address book. Mr. Julian, can you come back here?" "Leo, your mother doesn't want me to come back." "But I do, and Sam misses you too. He kept looking for you around the house after you left." Julian felt his heart tighten. "Leo, it's complicated. I did bad things that hurt your family. Mommy explained about Daddy, but you didn't know he worked at your company, right?" The child's innocence was both comforting and painful. "No, I didn't know, but that doesn't lessen my responsibility. Mommy is very sad. She cries every night when she thinks we're not looking." Julian closed his eyes, trying to control his emotion. "I'm sorry, Leo. I wish I could help, but your mother doesn't want to see me anymore." "Then come in secret. When she goes to work in the city, you can come here and talk to me." "I can't do that, Leo. It would be wrong." "Please, Uncle Julian, I have something very important to show you." "What is it?" "It's a surprise, but it's very important. Please." The child's plea broke Julian's last resistance. "All right, but only to see what you want to show me. And if your mother comes and finds me there, I'll explain that coming was my idea." "Thank you, Uncle Julian. Tomorrow morning, when Mommy leaves for work." The next morning, Julian took the now familiar route to the property. His heart was racing, torn between guilt and longing for that place that had become special to him. Leo was waiting on the porch, holding a large envelope. "Uncle Julian, I'm so glad you came. What is this you wanted to show me? Come, let's go inside." The house seemed different without Sarah's presence, quieter, more melancholy. Sam was sleeping in the makeshift crib in the living room. "Look," said Leo, opening the envelope. Inside were several new drawings, but these were different from the previous ones. They showed scenes of sadness. Sarah crying, Sam looking for someone, the house itself looking abandoned. "Why did you draw these sad things?" asked Julian. "Because this is what our house is like after you left. Mommy doesn't smile anymore, Sam gets cranky, even the flowers in the garden seem wilted." Julian examined the drawings with a heavy heart. Leo had captured with artistic precision the emotional impact of his departure on the family. "Leo, I can't come back here anymore. Your mother doesn't want it. But I do, and I'm sure she wants it too. She's just scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared of liking you and you leaving again, like Daddy did." The child's observation struck Julian like lightning. Could that be it? Was Sarah not just angry about the company issue, but also protecting her heart from another loss? "Leo, things are more complicated than you imagine." "I know they are. Mommy explained everything to me. But I also know you're a good person. Bad people don't come back to apologize. They don't cry when they find out they've hurt someone." "You saw me crying?" "The night before you left. I heard you crying in the room." "Bad people don't cry like that." Julian knelt in front of the boy, moved by his premature maturity. "Leo, even if I am a good person, it doesn't erase the harm I caused your family." "But you can do good things to make up for it, can't you?" "How?" Leo ran to get another drawing. This one showed Julian, Sarah, Leo and Sam working together in the vegetable garden, all smiling. "Like this, by helping us be happy again." At that moment, Sam woke up and started to cry. Julian, instinctively, went to the crib and picked up the baby. Sam immediately calmed down and smiled at him. "See," said Leo, "he remembers you, and he likes you." Julian looked at the baby in his arms, feeling a tenderness he didn't know existed within him. Sam was so small, so vulnerable, so full of trust. How could such a small child forgive so easily? "Uncle Julian," said Leo. "Can I ask a question?" "Of course." "Do you have children?" "No, I never have." "Why?" The child's simple question opened a wound Julian didn't even know existed. Why had he never had children? Why had he never started a family? "Because I always thought I didn't know how to be a father. My own father wasn't a good example." "But you're good with me and Sam. And Mom said when you're here you seem different, happier." "Your mother said that?" "Yes. The night after you left, I heard her talking to herself. She said you seemed to find peace here, that you were different from the city men she knew." Julian felt a spark of hope ignite in his chest. Could there still be a chance to fix things? "Leo, what do you think I should do?" "You should go back and apologize properly to Mom, and you should stay, forever." "Forever is a long time. Not when you like people. When you like them, forever is too short." Leo's childlike wisdom left Julian speechless. How could a 7-year-old understand matters of the heart so deeply? At that moment, they heard the sound of a car approaching. It was Sarah coming home from work early. "She's going to be mad," said Leo, worried. "Don't worry, I'll take full responsibility." Sarah came through the door and stopped immediately upon seeing Julian holding Sam. "What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice controlled but clearly irritated. "Leo asked me to come, said he had something important to show me. Leo, go to your room now." "Mom, please, now, Leo." The boy obeyed reluctantly, but before leaving the room, he handed the drawing of the happy family to Julian. "Give this to her," he whispered. When they were alone, Julian handed Sam to Sarah, who received him affectionately but kept a cold gaze directed at him. "I apologize for coming without your permission. Leo was worried about you." "Worried about me?" "He said you cry every night, and he drew these." Julian showed the sad drawings Leo had made. Sarah examined them, and her hardened expression began to soften. "He shouldn't worry about adult problems." "Maybe not. But he loves you and wants you to be happy. And you think you have anything to do with my happiness?" Julian hesitated before answering. "I hope so. Because you and the children have become important to me in a way I never imagined possible." "How can you say that? You barely know us." "It's true, I've known you for a short time. But in these few encounters, I felt more human connection than in years of living in New York City. You reminded me of what really matters." Sarah sat in the living room chair, still holding Sam, who had fallen back asleep. "Julian, even if your intentions are good, there are things that can't be ignored. You were responsible for the conditions that led my husband to—" "I know. And the guilt for this will stay with me for the rest of my life. But running away from here won't lessen that guilt. On the contrary, it will increase it, because I'll also be running away from the opportunity to do something good with my life." "What exactly are you proposing?" Julian took a deep breath. It was time to lay all his cards on the table. "I'm proposing that you let me take care of you all. Not out of pity, not just out of guilt, but because I've discovered you fill a void in my life I didn't even know existed." "Take care of us how?" "Financially, emotionally, practically. I want to be part of your lives, if you'll let me." Sarah looked at Leo's drawing on the table, the happy family working together. "And your life in New York City? Your businesses?" "I'll find a way to make it work. Or maybe it's time to change my life completely." "Julian, this is madness. You can't throw your life away because of guilt." "It's not throwing it away. It's rebuilding on a more solid foundation. All these years, I've built wealth, but I haven't built meaning. You've shown me what a life with meaning is." Sarah was silent for several minutes, clearly processing everything she had heard. "I need time to think," she said finally. "How much time do you need?" "I don't know. Maybe weeks, maybe months. It's a very important decision." "I understand, and I'll respect your time. But can I ask for one thing?" "What?" "Let me help Leo with his art studies. Regardless of what you decide about us, he has a talent that deserves to be developed." Sarah looked again at her son's drawings spread across the table. He really does have talent, doesn't he? He does, and if it's not developed, it could be lost. How would you do that? I could take him to New York City on weekends for classes with specialized teachers. Or bring teachers here. The important thing is that he has opportunities. What if I said no to you being part of our lives, but yes to helping Leo? Sarah's question hit Julian in the heart. It was exactly what he feared, being accepted only as a provider, not as an important person in their lives. It would be better than nothing, he answered honestly. But it wouldn't be what I truly want. What do you truly want? I want to be a father to Leo and Sam. I want to be your partner. I want to wake up every morning in this house and feel like I have a real family. The words came out of Julian with a brutal honesty that surprised him. He had never verbalized these desires, not even to himself. Sarah looked him in the eyes for a long moment. Are you sure of what you're saying? Because if I open my heart again and you decide this life is too simple for you, I won't be able to recover a second time. I'm sure, said Julian, and he realized he truly was. The life I built in New York City is empty. Professional success doesn't fill the emotional void. I want to build something real, something lasting. And what if the boys get used to you as a father figure, and then you change your mind? I won't change my mind, but if it reassures you, I can legally give up any claim to my assets if I ever decide to abandon you. It's not a question of money, Julian. It's a question of heart. I know, and my heart has already chosen. It has chosen you. At that moment, Leo appeared in the bedroom doorway, clearly having heard part of the conversation. Mom, can I say something? Leo, you should be in your room. But it's important. Can I say something? Sarah sighed and motioned for her son to come closer. Mom, remember when Dad died and you were very sad? I remember. And you told me that sometimes God takes special people from our lives because he needs them in heaven, but then he sends other special people to take care of us. Sarah swallowed hard, remembering the words of comfort she had used to explain the loss to her son. I remember. I think Uncle Julian is the special person God sent to take care of us. The child's simplicity and faith touched both adults deeply. Julian felt his eyes well up and noticed that Sarah was also moved. Leo, she began. Mum, I miss Dad every day. But when Uncle Julian is here, I don't feel so alone. And you smile more too. Is it true that I smile more? Yes. And Sam is happier too. The whole house feels different. Sarah looked at Julian, then at her son, then at Sam sleeping in her arms. If we decide to try, it would have to be slow, step by step. Julian's heart leapt with joy, but he tried to maintain his composure. Whatever you want, at your pace. And you'd have to prove you're serious, that you won't disappear at the first sign of trouble. How can I prove that? By selling your life in New York City, by coming to live here for good. Sarah's proposal was radical and frightening, but Julian found he felt no fear, only relief. You want me to move here? If you're serious about being a family, yes. It can't be one weekend here, another there. The boys need stability. And what about my professional situation? That's for you to decide. But here you'd have to find work that's compatible with life in the country, with a family. Julian thought of all the possibilities. He could manage his businesses remotely, he could invest in the region, he could even start a completely new life. I accept, he said. I'll arrange the move. Leo shouted with joy and ran to hug Julian. Uncle Julian is going to live with us. Easy, Leo, said Sarah. It's still just a trial. We have to see if we work out together as a family. We will work out, said the boy with the absolute certainty of childhood. In the weeks that followed, Julian began organizing his move. He transferred the management of his businesses to trusted partners, retaining only an ownership stake. He sold his luxurious apartment in New York City and began arranging a move he never imagined he would make. During this period, he made regular trips to the property, always staying at Sarah's and the children's house. With each visit, their time together became more natural, more familiar. Leo proved to be an intelligent and curious boy, always asking questions about the business world and telling stories about life in the country. Pedro, who was now starting to walk, treated Julian as if he had been a member of the family for a long time, and Sarah gradually lowered her defenses. There were still moments of tension when the reality of the situation weighed on them, but there were also moments of genuine tenderness, of real connection. One night, 2 months after the decision to try being a family, Sarah and Julian were talking on the porch while the children slept. "Are you sure about what you're doing?" she asked. "Sometimes I look at you and think you must be crazy. Maybe I am, but it's the first time in my life I feel sane." "How so?" "For 42 years I lived a life that wasn't really mine, following social expectations, accumulating material possessions, competing in a game that brought me no happiness. Here, for the first time, I feel like I'm being myself. Even knowing life here is harder, simpler. Especially because of that. I've learned that simplicity isn't poverty, it's clarity. Here I know what really matters. You, the children, a real home." Sarah fell silent, watching the stars in the clear country sky. "You know what was the hardest thing to accept about you?" she finally said. "The fact that I was responsible for the company's situation. No. It was realizing I was falling in love with you despite everything." Sarah's confession caught Julian completely by surprise. "You are—" "I am, and it terrifies me." Julian approached her on the porch. "Why does it terrify you?" "Because I don't want to love someone again and risk losing them. I don't know if I could survive another loss." "Sarah, I can't promise I'll never depart this life. None of us can make that promise, but I can promise I'll never voluntarily abandon you. How can I be sure of that? Because you and the children have become more important to me than my own life." They fell silent for a few minutes, absorbing the weight of the words that had been spoken. "Julian?" "Yes?" "Thank you for coming back, for not giving up when I told you to leave. Thank you for giving me a second chance." That night, for the first time, they kissed. It was a gentle kiss, full of promises and hopes, but also of fears and insecurities. It was the kiss of two people who had suffered greatly and were trying to believe in the possibility of being happy again. The next morning, Julian woke to the sound of laughter coming from the kitchen. He found Leo teaching Sam to draw, the two of them sitting on the floor with paper and pencils scattered around. "Look, Uncle Julian," shouted Leo. "Sam made a drawing." It was just shapeless scribbles, but Julian pretended to be impressed. "What talent! He'll be an artist like his brother." "And like you too," said Leo innocently. "How so?" "Mom said you used to draw when you were a kid." Julian looked at Sarah, who was preparing breakfast and had stopped to listen to the conversation. "You told him about that?" "I did. I said that sometimes special people need to put their dreams aside for a while, but they can return to them when they find the right family." Sarah's observation touched Julian deeply. She was right. He had abandoned his love for art when he left that house decades ago. Perhaps it was time to rediscover that passion. "You know what, Leo? I think I'll start drawing again." "Really? Can we draw together?" "Of course we can." And so a new tradition began in the house. Every afternoon after work, Julian and Leo would sit at the kitchen table to draw. Sometimes Sarah would join them, trying to sketch some flowers or simple landscapes. Even Sam participated in his own way, making his colorful scribbles. 3 months after the decision to form a family, Julian made a discovery that would change everything again. He was organizing some old documents he had brought from New York City when he found a folder he hadn't seen in years. Inside were papers related to the sale of his parents' rural property, documents he thought he had lost during a move. One of the papers caught his attention. It was a handwritten letter, yellowed with time, signed by his mother. Julian opened it with trembling hands. "My dear Julian," the letter said, "if you are reading this, it means you have come home. I always knew you would return one day, because this land is in your blood as much as it is in mine. I know you left hurt, angry about our poverty, about the limitations of this simple life. I don't blame you for that. I always dreamed of better opportunities for you, but I want you to know that your childhood here wasn't only suffering. There was much love too. The love your father and I felt for you, love for the land, love for the simple but honest life we tried to build. If you ever return, I hope you can see this house not just as a symbol of poverty, but as a symbol of family unity. And I hope you can build here your own memories of love and happiness. Your father and I will be old or perhaps already gone when you read this. But I want you to know that our greatest joy would be knowing you found peace and love in this place where you were born. Take good care of our home, son. Fill it with children's laughter, with conversations on the porch, with music and art. Make it the home we always dreamed it would be. With all my eternal love, your mother, Eleanor. Julian finished reading the letter with tears streaming down his face. His mother had foreseen his return, had left a blessing and a request. And by an extraordinary coincidence, or perhaps by fate, he was fulfilling exactly what she had asked. He ran to show the letter to Sarah, who was in the vegetable garden with the children. "Sarah, I found something incredible." "What is it?" she asked, seeing the emotion on his face. Julian read the letter aloud to her and the children. When he finished, everyone was moved. "Your mother knew you would come back," said Sarah, touched by the letter. "She did, and she asked for exactly what we are doing, filling the house with children's laughter, with conversations on the porch, with art. It's as if she blessed our family," observed Leo with the simple wisdom of children. "That's exactly what she did," agreed Julian. That night, they decided to frame the letter and hang it on the living room wall, as a permanent blessing for the family they were building. 6 months later, Julian had settled completely into rural life. He had set up a small office on the property from where he managed his business remotely. He had also begun investing in the region, helping other small producers and contributing to local development. Leo was taking art lessons twice a week with a teacher who came from the capital, and his talent was blossoming quickly. Sam had taken his first steps and spoken his first words, always with Julian nearby to celebrate each achievement. And Sarah had started to smile for real again, to make plans for the future, to believe in the possibility of being happy once more. One Sunday morning, as they were having coffee on the porch and watching Sam play in the garden, Sarah asked a question that had been in her heart for some time. "Julian, are you happy here? Happier than I've ever been in my life. Why do you ask? Sometimes I wonder if you aren't sacrificing too much for us." "Sarah, look around. I have a home I love, a family I love, a purpose that goes beyond making money. How could that be a sacrifice? And you don't miss the life you had? The loneliness? The constant competition? The superficial relationships? No, I don't miss any of that. Not even the hustle and bustle of the big city? Not a bit. I've discovered that hustle isn't synonymous with an intense life. Life can be intense in simplicity too." Leo, who was playing on the ground near them, looked up. "Uncle Julian, can I ask a question?" "Of course." "Are you going to marry Mom?" The child's question caught both adults by surprise. They looked at each other, unsure how to respond. "Leo," began Sarah, "it's just that at school everyone asks if you're my stepdad or Mom's boyfriend, and I don't know what to say." Julian and Sarah laughed at the childish sincerity. "What would you like to say?" asked Julian. "I'd like to say you're my father. Not the father who made me, but the father who raised me and who will stay with me forever." Leo's words touched Julian deeply. Being a father had become the most important and rewarding role of his life. "And I would very much like to be officially your father, Leo. And Sam's father, too." "Then why don't you get married?" Sarah and Julian looked at each other again. The truth was that both had thought about it several times, but neither had taken the initiative to broach the subject. "It's a very important decision," said Sarah. "Grown-ups need time to think about things like that." "But haven't you both been thinking about it for a long time?" "Leo has a point," said Julian. "We've thought about it, we've lived together, we've built a family. Maybe it's time to make it official." Julian rose from his chair and, to everyone's surprise, knelt down in front of Sarah. "Sarah Jenkins, will you marry me? Not just because we'd make a good family, but because I love you with all my heart." Sarah was completely speechless. Leo shouted with joy and started clapping. "Say yes, Mom! Marry Uncle Julian." Even Sam seemed to understand something special was happening and began to laugh and clap too. "Julian," said Sarah, her voice choked, "are you sure?" I've never been more sure of anything in my life, even knowing I'm a simple woman from the country with 2 kids and a complicated past. Especially because of that. You taught me that simplicity is elegance, that strength is femininity, that true love includes people as they are, not as we wish they were. Sarah began to cry, but they were tears of joy. "Yes," she finally said. "Yes, I will marry you." Leo shouted even louder and ran to hug them both. Sam was also included in the group hug, creating a moment of pure family happiness. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. The wedding was set for 2 months later, in the small-town church where Julian's parents had married decades before. It would be a simple ceremony, with only close friends and neighbors from the area. During the preparations, Julian made sure everything was done with the children's participation. Leo was chosen as the best man, and Sam, even though small, would carry the rings in a special little basket. A week before the wedding, while organizing the last details, Sarah found Julian sitting on the porch, looking thoughtfully at the horizon. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, sitting beside him. "About how strange life is. A year ago, I was a lonely and empty man, focused only on making money. Today, I'm about to marry the woman I love and adopt 2 wonderful children. Do you regret anything?" "I regret taking so long to come home. I regret losing so many years living a life that wasn't mine. But if you hadn't lived that life, maybe you wouldn't appreciate this one. You're right. Maybe everything happened at the right time." "Julian, can I ask a personal question?" "Of course. What happened to make you leave here with so much anger? You never told the full story." Julian sighed. It was a story he had buried deep in his memory, but perhaps it was time to share it with the woman who would be his wife. "My parents were good people, but my father had a serious problem with drinking. When he drank, he'd get violent, yell at my mother, break things in the house." "And you witnessed that?" "I witnessed it and felt powerless. I was just a boy. I couldn't protect my mother. The poverty made everything worse. No money to get help, no options to get out of that situation." "Is that why you left?" "Partly. When I turned 18, my father had a particularly violent episode. He threatened to physically hurt my mother. That's when I stepped in and ended up fighting with him. And then he told me to get out of the house, that as long as I lived there, I would disrespect him. My mother tried to mediate, but I had already made up my mind. I left that same day with the clothes on my back and a promise that I would never return." "Did you keep in touch with them after that?" "No. I went to New York City, started from scratch, built my life far from here. By the time I learned they had passed, it was too late for any reconciliation." Sarah held Julian's hand. "I'm so sorry. It must have been very hard to carry that pain alone for so many years." "It was. But now I understand my mother was right in the letter she wrote. There was love here too, not just suffering, and perhaps my father fought his demons the best way he knew how." "Do you forgive him?" "I'm learning to forgive. And most importantly, I'm learning that I can be a different father to Leo and Sam. You already are a different father. They love you unconditionally, and I love them, more than I thought it was possible to love." On the morning of the wedding, Julian woke up early and walked around the property that was now truly his home. He visited the vegetable garden he and Sarah had expanded, the chicken coop where Leo continued to care for the hens, the corner of the yard where Sam took his first wobbly steps. Everything was different from when he was a child, but at the same time, everything was as it should be. The house had transformed into the loving home his parents had always dreamed it would be. The ceremony at the church was moving. Sarah was beautiful in a simple yet elegant dress made by the best seamstress in town. Leo, proud in his first suit, carried the rings with all seriousness. Sam, in a neighbor's arms, clapped throughout the entire ceremony, drawing smiles from the congregation. When the priest asked if Julian promised to love and care for Sarah and her children, his answer was firm and emotional. "I promise to love Sarah as my wife, Leo and Sam as my sons, and this family as the greatest treasure of my life." After the ceremony, there was a simple celebration on the property itself. The neighbors brought food, someone brought a guitar, Children ran around the yard while the adults chatted on the porch. It was exactly the kind of celebration Julian had never imagined for his wedding. Simple, warm, full of genuine people who cared for each other. During the celebration, Leo approached him with a special gift. "Uncle Julian. I mean, Dad, this is my wedding gift for you." It was a framed drawing showing the complete family, Julian, Sarah, Leo and Sam, in front of the house, all smiling and holding hands. "I drew our family as it is now," the boy explained. "Complete and happy." Julian couldn't control his emotion. He knelt down and hugged the boy tightly. "Thank you, Leo. It's the most beautiful gift I've ever received. Can I call you Dad all the time now? Always. Forever." That night, after the guests had left and the children had gone to bed, Julian and Sarah were alone on the porch, watching the stars. "How does it feel to be a married woman again?" he asked. "Different than I expected. The first time I married very young, full of romantic dreams. Now I married more mature, knowing exactly what I want." "And what do you want?" "I want a simple life, but one full of love. I want to see our children grow up happy and secure. I want to grow old by your side on this porch, telling stories to our grandchildren." "Our grandchildren? Well, if Leo and Sam ever have children, they'll be our grandchildren too, won't they?" Julian smiled at the future Sarah was painting. Decades of family life, of small daily joys, of lasting love. "And you?" she asked. "How does it feel to be a married man?" "I feel like I've finally found my place in the world. For 42 years I was lost without knowing. Now I know where I belong. Here with us, here with you, in this house, on this land. It's like I've come home after a very long journey." They were silent for a few minutes, absorbing the tranquility of the night and the feeling of completeness that enveloped them. "Julian?" "Yes?" "Thank you for not giving up on us when things got tough. Thank you for giving a lost man a chance to find his way back home." 2 years after the wedding, the family's life had settled into a happy and productive routine. Julian had diversified his business to include sustainable farming and rural tourism, turning part of the property into a charming guest house that welcomed visitors from the city in search of tranquility. Leo, now 10 years old, was gaining regional recognition for his artistic talent. He had participated in several children's exhibitions and won some important awards. Julian had set up a small studio on the property where the boy could freely develop his gift. Sam, at 3 years old, had become a happy and curious child who had always treated Julian as if he were his biological father. There was no memory of another man ever playing that role in his life, and Sarah had flourished as a woman and as a mother. The emotional and financial security had allowed her to explore her own talents. She discovered she had a gift for cooking and was thinking of opening a small home-style restaurant for the tourists visiting the guest house. One Saturday morning, as the family had coffee on the porch, a tradition they had kept since the early days, Julian made a special announcement. "I have some news for you," he said with a mysterious smile. "What news?" asked Leo, always curious. "I've decided to retire from my business in New York City." Sarah almost dropped her coffee cup. "What do you mean?" "I'm going to sell my stakes in the companies and dedicate myself completely to our life here, to the guest house, to Leo's studio, to the family." "But what about our financial security?" asked Sarah, ever practical. "We have more than enough security, and I've discovered that true security doesn't come from money, it comes from love and family unity." "And you won't miss the business?" asked Leo. "I won't miss the pressure, the stress, the constant travel. I'm going to dedicate myself to ventures that bring me pleasure. The guest house, the studio, maybe even start drawing seriously again." "Daddy's going to draw again?" Sam perked up, even without fully understanding the conversation. "Daddy's going to draw again," confirmed Julian, ruffling the boy's hair. Julian's decision represented the final stage of his complete transformation. From a lonely urban businessman, he had become a man of the country, dedicated to family and community. 6 months later, when he finalized the sale of all his city businesses, Julian organized a special party to celebrate his retirement and total dedication to rural life. During the party, he gave an emotional speech to the gathered friends and neighbors. 4 years ago, I came back to this house thinking I was settling matters from the past. I didn't know I was actually building my future. I met an incredible family, rediscovered what really matters in life, and learned that home isn't where you're born, but where you choose to stay. Warm applause followed. Leo approached the makeshift podium. "Can I speak too?" Julian smiled and handed the microphone to his stepson. "I want to thank my dad, Julian, for coming home," said the boy with a maturity surprising for his 10 years. "He taught us that family isn't just blood, it's a choice. And he chose to be our family every day." There wasn't a dry eye in the crowd. Sam, who didn't understand the formal meaning of the words, felt the general emotion and started clapping too, drawing smiles and laughter from everyone. Sarah stepped forward and added, "This house was once a place of sorrow, then a place of new beginnings, and now it's a place of fulfillment. Thank you to everyone who helped our family get here." That night, after everyone had left, the family gathered on the porch for their sacred ritual of stargazing before bed. "Dad," Leo said suddenly, "can I ask a kind of strange question?" "Of course. Do you think your father and mother would be proud of what you've done with their house?" Julian thought about the question for a long moment. "I think so. Especially my mother. She asked in her letter for me to fill the house with children's laughter and love. That's exactly what I did." "And your father?" "My father was a complicated man, fighting demons he couldn't defeat. But deep down I think he also wanted a happy family. Perhaps he's at peace knowing I managed to build what he couldn't." Sam, drowsy in Sarah's lap, murmured something unintelligible that sounded like family. "That's true, Sam," said Julian, stroking the boy's hair. "Family is the most important thing in the world." That night, Julian had a vivid dream of his parents. They were young and healthy, smiling on the porch of the house. His mother was painting a picture while his father played a guitar. There was no sadness or anger, only peace and contentment. When he woke up, he knew he had finally made peace with his past. 5 years had passed since the wedding. The family had grown and prospered in ways none of them had imagined possible. Leo, now 15, had become a nationally recognized prodigy artist. His works were sold in galleries in New York City and Rio de Janeiro, and he had already received several offers to study abroad. But he always said he wanted to keep living at home with the family. Sam, 8 years old, had developed not only his brother's artistic talent but also a passion for nature and farming. He spent hours helping Julian in the vegetable garden and taking care of the animals on the property. The guest house had become one of the most sought-after tourist destinations in the region, known for its family hospitality and genuine connection to rural life. Sarah had opened her home-style restaurant, which received praise from food critics in the capital. And Julian had rediscovered his passion for art. His paintings, inspired by rural landscapes and family life, were beginning to gain recognition. He and Leo often exhibited together as father and son artists. One Sunday afternoon, while painting on the porch and watching Leo teach Sam to draw, Julian reflected on the extraordinary journey his life had become. It had started as a simple visit to settle inheritance matters and had transformed into a complete personal reinvention. He had lost an empty house but gained a home full of love. He had stopped being a lonely man to become a father, a husband, an active member of a community. And the most surprising thing, he was genuinely happy. For the first time in his adult life, he woke up every day with positive expectation, slept every night with gratitude in his heart. "Daddy, come see what Sam drew," called Leo. Julian left his canvas and went to see his youngest son scribble. It was a simple drawing of a house with familiar figures in front, Daddy, Mommy, Leo, and himself. "Very beautiful, Sam. What house is this?" "It's our house," the boy replied proudly. "Our family's house." "Our house," repeated Julian, savoring the words. "Yes, it really is our house." That night after dinner, the family gathered in the living room for their new tradition, a storytelling session where each would tell a story or share something special that had happened during the week. "I'll start," said Leo. "This week, a magazine from New York City called wanting to do a feature on young artists from the countryside. And you know what I said?" "What?" everyone asked. "I said I'd only accept if they included my whole family in the article. because my art wouldn't exist without you all." Sarah was moved by her son's words. "My story of the week," continued Sam, "is that I learned how to make bread with Mommy, and when I grow up, I'm going to have a bakery here on our property." "What a great idea," encouraged Julian. "Our property could have an art studio, a restaurant, and a bakery. It'll be a complete family complex." "My story," said Sarah, "is that a family from New York City who stayed here asked me if we wouldn't like to franchise the guest house concept. But I said no, because what we do here is unique and can't be copied." "Well answered," agreed Julian. "And my story of the week is that I finished a painting I've been working on for months. It's a portrait of all of us on the porch, and I'm going to give it to you as a gift for our wedding anniversary." "Can I see it?" asked Leo. "Only on the anniversary day. It's a surprise." After the stories, the children went off to bed. Julian and Sarah were left alone on the porch, as they always did before ending the day. "You know what amazes me," said Sarah. "What?" "How our life fit together perfectly, as if it were truly destiny." "Do you believe in destiny?" "I believe some people are born to find each other. Maybe we were born to form this family, to raise these boys together, to turn this house into a place of happiness." "That's a beautiful way to see it," agreed Julian. "And you know what my theory is?" "What?" "My theory is that my parents and your first husband are together somewhere, proud of the family we've built. They planted the seeds, we're harvesting the fruit." "What a beautiful thought, and comforting too." They remained silent for a few minutes, listening to the night sounds of the countryside and feeling the cool mountain breeze. "Julian?" "Are you happy? Truly happy? Happier than I ever dreamed possible. And you?" "Me too. Sometimes I'm even afraid of being so happy, as if it were tempting fate." "Don't be afraid. We deserve this happiness, all of us." "You're right. We suffered, we overcame, and we deserve to harvest the fruits of the love we planted." 10 years after the initial reunion, the family celebrated a decade together with a big party at the estate. Leo, now a 20-year-old young man and a nationally recognized artist, had decided to open his own gallery in the neighboring town, but continued living at the family estate. Sam, at 13, had confirmed his passion for sustainable agriculture and was implementing innovative techniques that had made the estate a model of sustainability in the region. Sarah had become not only a wife and mother, but also a respected businesswoman, with the restaurant recognized as one of the best in the countryside. She constantly received offers to expand the business, but preferred to keep it a family-scale operation. And Julian, at 52, had become a respected figure in the community not only for his successful businesses, but mainly for the personal transformation that had inspired others to rethink their life priorities. During the party, the mayor made a point of paying tribute to the family. "Julian Sterling arrived here 10 years ago as a businessman from the capital settling inheritance matters," he said in his speech, "and he became one of the most important citizens of our community, not for the money he brought, but for the example of how a person can completely change their life when they find what truly matters." Warm applause followed. Julian stood up to thank them. "Thank you for the tribute, but I want to make it clear that the ones who changed my life were this family and this community. I didn't bring anything here. On the contrary, it was here that I found everything I had lost along the way." More applause. Sarah held his hand, proud of the man she had married. 10 years ago," Julian continued, "I was a rich man, but poor in spirit. Today I am a prosperous man, but above all, rich in love, family, and purpose, and that is priceless." That night, after everyone had left, the family gathered once more on the sacred porch. "You know what my greatest pride is?" said Julian. "What?" everyone asked. "It's not having built a successful company. It's not having recognized paintings. My greatest pride is having raised you two," he pointed to Leo and Sam, "as good, honest men who understand the value of family and community." "Dad, you didn't raise us alone," said Leo. "Mom played a fundamental role." "That's true, we raised you together, as a team." "And you did a great job," Sam joked. "Look how handsome and smart we turned out. Everyone laughed at the boy's modesty. "Speaking seriously," said Sam, growing more serious. "Thank you for giving me a real family. I don't remember what it was like before, but I know I now have everything I need." "And I," added Leo, "want to thank you for teaching me that success means nothing if you don't have family to share it with. That's why I'll never leave here, no matter how many opportunities come up out there." "Leo," said Julian, "we don't want you to give up opportunities because of us. It's not because of you. It's to stay with you. There's a difference." Sarah was moved by her son's maturity. "You two are our greatest treasure," she said, "and knowing you choose to stay here out of love, not obligation, is the greatest joy a mother can have." On that special night, they stayed on the porch later than usual, reminiscing about stories from the 10 years that had passed, making plans for the future, simply enjoying each other's company. When they finally retired to sleep, Julian said his silent prayer of gratitude, a practice he had developed since moving there. He gave thanks for the family he had gained, for the house that had become a real home, for the second chance life had given him, and for the first time since childhood, he felt he was exactly where he was meant to be. 5 more years passed. Leo, now 25, had become a nationally recognized artist, but true to his promise, he continued living on the family property. He had built a small house on the back of the property, maintaining his independence while staying close to the family. Sam, 18, was graduating high school and had already been accepted to a sustainable agriculture university, but he planned to take the course online so as not to leave the property he loved. Sarah, at 45, had become a respected regional entrepreneur. Her restaurant drew visitors from various cities, and she had launched a book of traditional regional recipes that became a bestseller. And Julian, at 57, had found the perfect balance between work and personal life. His paintings were sold in important galleries, but he never accepted commissions that would require him to travel or be away from his family for long. On a Tuesday morning, as Julian painted on the porch and watched Sam tend to the vegetable garden, he received a call that would once again change the course of his life. "Hello? Mr. Julian Sterling? This is Dr. Santos, director of the New York Institute of Contemporary Art." "Yes, speaking." "Sir, we are organizing an exhibition about artists who changed their lives, who abandoned traditional careers to pursue art. We would very much like to include you in the exhibition." "It's an honor, but I generally don't accept exhibitions that require me to be away from my family for a long time." "That wouldn't be necessary. We could mount the exhibition in the very region where you live. We want to bring quality art to rural areas, and your story would be perfect for that." Julian became interested. An exhibition in his region could benefit not only his career, but the entire local arts community. "Give me more details." "The idea would be to mount the exhibition in the town nearest to your property, tell your story of personal transformation, and also include works by your son Leo, who we understand is equally talented." "Leo would be in the exhibition too?" "Yes. It would be an exhibition about family art, about how creativity can unite generations and transform lives." Julian was moved by the proposal. It was exactly the kind of project that made sense for his new life philosophy. "I accept, but on one condition." "What?" "That you also include my wife, who is an exceptional culinary artist. The exhibition would truly be about family art if it included all 3 talents in our home." "Excellent idea. It will be a multidisciplinary exhibition, visual arts and culinary art." When Julian shared the news with the family, the reaction was euphoric. "An exhibition with all of us," said Sarah, incredulous. "But I'm not an artist in the traditional sense." "Of course you are," insisted Leo. "Your recipes are edible works of art. And your dishes are as beautiful as my drawings," added Sam. The preparation for the exhibition kept the whole family busy for months. Julian selected his best paintings from recent years, all depicting rural and family life. Leo contributed a new series of drawings and paintings about roots and belonging, and Sarah developed a special menu of regional dishes to be served during the exhibition opening. The opening of the exhibition, Family Art Transformation and Belonging, was a landmark event in the region. People came from various cities to see the works and learn the story of the family that had become a symbol of new beginnings and happiness. During the opening speech, Julian gave an emotional reflection on his journey. 15 years ago, I was a lost man who returned to this region just to settle bureaucratic matters. I never imagined I was actually coming home to my true life. This exhibition isn't just about art, it's about transformation, about the courage to change, about the power of family and community. Warm applause followed. Leo added, "My art exists because I have roots, not just geographical roots, but emotional roots. This land, this family, this community are the source of everything I create." And Sarah, shy but proud, said, "I never considered myself an artist until my family showed me that cooking with love is also art. Thank you for teaching me to see the beauty in what I've always done naturally." The exhibition was an absolute success. It remained open for 3 months, received over 5,000 visitors, and generated articles in national newspapers and magazines about the family that had found happiness in simplicity. But the most important thing for all of them wasn't the external recognition, but the confirmation that they had built something special together, not just a family, but a legacy of love, art, and authenticity. 2 years after the exhibition, on a sunny autumn Sunday, the family gathered on the porch for a very special occasion. Leo had announced he was going to get married. The bride was Grace, a young art teacher he had met during the exhibition, and who shared his passion for simple living and socially engaged art. "Does she want to live here on the property?" asked Sam, worried about changes in the family dynamic. "Yes, she does," replied Leo. "In fact, she was the one who suggested it. She says she's never seen a family so close-knit and dreams of being part of it." "And where will you live?" asked Sarah. "I thought about building a slightly larger house in the back, with space for a studio for me and for her, but always close to you all." "How wonderful!" exclaimed Julian. "The property will have a new generation of artists." "And perhaps a literal new generation too," said Leo, blushing. "Grace and I want to have children." The prospect of grandchildren left Sarah and Julian euphoric. "Imagine," said Sarah, "children growing up here, playing in the same yard where you all played, learning about art and nature." "It will be like a circle closing," Julian added. "Or better yet, like a circle renewing itself." Leo's wedding was set for the following spring, in the same little church where Julian and Sarah had married. It would be a simple ceremony, followed by a party at the property, exactly as the family liked to do things. During the preparations, Grace became completely integrated into the family. She helped Sarah in the kitchen, played with Sam, and had long conversations with Julian about art and life philosophy. It was as if she had always belonged there. "You have a special family," she said to Julian one afternoon, while helping organize the studio for the party. "I've never seen people so genuinely connected to each other." "It wasn't always like this," admitted Julian. "We had to learn to be a family, but when love is true, people fit together naturally. That's what impresses me most. You are a family by choice, not just by blood, and that is stronger than any biological bond." "Grace, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "Thank you for loving Leo not in spite of our simple life, but because of it. Many women from the city wouldn't understand our choice to live here." "Julian, I grew up in the city and I know what that life is like. It's empty, rushed, artificial. What you have here is real. It's true love, genuine connection, life purpose. Any sensible person would choose this over what the city offers." On the eve of the wedding, Julian had a private conversation with Leo. "Son, tomorrow you're getting married. I want to give you a piece of advice my father never gave me." "What advice?" "Marriage isn't about finding the perfect person. It's about building a perfect love with the person you've chosen. You'll have difficulties. You'll disagree sometimes. You'll go through hard times. But if you keep respect, admiration, and the desire to grow together, you'll be happy." "Thank you, Dad. And thank you for being an example of how to love truly. I learned by watching you and Mom. You boys are the ones who taught us what unconditional love is. We grew together as a family." "Dad, can I ask a personal question?" Of course. Do you regret anything about the life we built here? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. This was the best decision I ever made in my life. Even though you gave up a lot of money, status, professional recognition. Leo, status and money are external things. They come and go. But the love we built here, the family we are, that is forever. Leo's wedding was a magical event. The little church was decorated with flowers from the property itself. The party took place in the backyard under the trees the family had planted over the years, and all the food was prepared by Sarah with ingredients from the garden. Grace looked beautiful in a simple dress made by the same seamstress who had made Sarah's dress years before. Leo was elegant but relaxed, clearly happy to make his union with the woman he loved official. During the ceremony, the priest made a special reference to the family. Leo and Grace represent the third generation of love that blossoms on this property. First, Julian and Sarah built a family based on love and choice. Then they raised Leo and Sam with love and dedication. And now Leo and Grace begin their own journey of love, while keeping their roots in the land and the family that shaped them. After the ceremony during the party, Julian made an emotional toast. 17 years ago, I returned to this house lost and alone. Today I see my son marrying a wonderful woman, in the presence of a united family and a community that welcomed us. Life may take us down unexpected paths, but it always leads us where we need to be. Grace approached Julian during the party. Thank you for welcoming me as a daughter from the very first day. Thank you for making my son so happy, and for choosing to be part of our crazy family. Crazy in the best sense, she laughed. A family that paints together, cooks together, dreams together. It's everything I ever wanted for my life. That night, after the guests had left and the newlyweds had retired to their new little house, Julian and Sarah were alone on the porch for the first time in a long while. How does it feel to be a mother-in-law, he asked. Strange, but happy. Grace is a special girl. She'll take good care of our Leo, and she'll give us beautiful grandchildren. Are you eager to be a grandfather? Very. Imagine tiny versions of Leo and Grace running around this backyard, learning to draw, helping in the vegetable garden. It will be beautiful to see a new generation grow up here. They stayed silent for a few minutes, absorbing the tranquility of the night and the feeling of completeness that enveloped them. Julian, yes. Thank you. For what? For making all the dreams I didn't even know I had come true. For giving me a complete family. For raising my children as if they were your own from the start. For building with me a life that's better than any fairy tale. Julian held his wife's hand. Thank you for teaching me what it truly means to love. For giving me a reason to live that goes beyond myself. And so, under the stars that had always witnessed their most important moments, Julian and Sarah celebrated another chapter in the love story that had begun with a misunderstanding and transformed into the foundation of an extraordinary family. 1 year after Leo's wedding, Grace gave birth to a beautiful baby girl who was named Eleanor, in honor of the great-grandmother who had written the prophetic letter about the property's future. The arrival of the first granddaughter brought a new and renewed joy to the whole family. Julian discovered that being a grandfather was even more rewarding than he had imagined. He spent hours painting portraits of the baby, teaching her lullabies that his own mother had sung to him in childhood. Sarah proved to be a doting grandmother, always willing to look after her granddaughter, so Leo and Grace could work on their artistic projects. Sam, in turn, became the world's most playful uncle, inventing games and building handmade toys for his niece. Our family is getting big, said Sarah one afternoon, as she watched 4 generations gathered on the porch, her and Julian, Leo and Grace, Sam playing with Eleanor in his arms. And it's going to get even bigger, announced Grace with a mysterious smile. What do you mean? Everyone asked. I'm pregnant again. The house erupted in celebration. Leo lifted Grace in his arms. Sam shouted for joy. Eleanor laughed in Julian's arms without understanding, but feeling the general happiness. Another grandchild, exclaimed Julian, moved. When will it be born? Asked Sarah. In December. It will be our Christmas present. And so the family prepared to welcome another member. Leo and Grace's little house was expanded to accommodate the family's growth, while always keeping it close to the main house. Sam, now a graduate in sustainable agriculture, had transformed the property into a nationally recognized model of sustainability. He received visits from students and researchers interested in the innovative techniques he had developed. "You know what makes me proudest about you?" Julian said to Sam one morning, as they walked through the vegetable garden. "What?" "It's that you found your passion and turned it into your life's purpose, and you did it without leaving home, without abandoning the family. I learned from you, Dad. You taught me that success isn't about where you get to, but about how you contribute to the world from where you are. Do you plan to get married someday?" "I do. In fact, I'm already seeing someone." Julian stopped walking, surprised. "What do you mean? Why didn't you tell us?" "Because I wanted to be sure first. But now I am. Chloe is a girl from around here, the daughter of Mr. Miller from the neighboring farm. She studies veterinary medicine and dreams of working with family farming." "And when will we officially meet her?" "How about Sunday? Can I bring her for lunch with us?" "Of course, your mother will be thrilled. 2 married children, grandchildren. Our nest is getting full." On Sunday, Chloe was officially introduced to the family. She was a simple, intelligent young woman who clearly loved Sam and shared his passion for country life. "So you want to work with family farming?" asked Julian. "Yes. I think the future of sustainable food is in family farming, in the small properties that produce with environmental awareness." "Sam found a soulmate," Sarah commented quietly to Grace. "Just like his father," Grace replied, looking affectionately at Julian. During lunch, it became clear that Chloe fit perfectly into the family. She conversed naturally, helped in the kitchen, played with Eleanor as if she had been part of the family for years. "Can I ask a personal question?" she said to Julian. "Of course." "Is it true that you left a career in New York City to come live here?" "It's true." "Do you regret it?" "Never. It was the best decision of my life." "Why do you ask?" "Because many people think I'm crazy for wanting to keep living here after I graduate. They think I should go to the big city, work for an important company. And what do you think about that? I think each person needs to find their place in the world. My place is here, working with the land, caring for the animals, being part of a community. I don't see that as a limitation, I see it as a choice." "Then you and Sam are perfect for each other," said Julian, smiling. 6 months later, Sam made his relationship with Chloe official, and 6 months after that, they announced their engagement. It would be the second wedding in the family in a few years. "Our property is going to turn into a family village," Leo joked during the engagement dinner. "And why would that be bad?" asked Grace, 8 months pregnant. "It wouldn't be bad at all, it would be perfect." In December, while preparing for Sam's wedding, Grace gave birth to their second child, a boy who was named Arthur in honor of Julian's grandfather. "Now we have Eleanor Jane and Arthur Eleanor," Sam joked. "The great-grandparents' names live on in the new generation." Julian held his grandson in his arms, moved to see how the circle of life completed itself so perfectly. "Welcome to the family, Arthur," he whispered to the baby. "You will grow up in the most loving place in the world." Sam and Chloe's wedding took place the following spring, again at the little town church, followed by a celebration at the property. This time, besides family and friends, the 2 little grandchildren were present. Eleanor, now 2 years old, running around the yard, and Arthur, 4 months old, sleeping in his grandparents' arms. During the ceremony, Sam made an emotional declaration. "Chloe, I promise to love you, as I learned by watching my parents love each other. I promise to build our family based on the respect and dedication I've seen in this house every day. And I promise to raise our children with the values I was taught: love for family, respect for nature, and gratitude for a simple but full life." After the wedding, Chloe moved to the property, and Sam built a third little house for them, completing what Julian now affectionately called the family village. One night, 2 weeks after the wedding, the whole family gathered on the main house's porch for a special storytelling session. "I'll start with my story," said Julian. 20 years ago, I was a lost man who returned to this house only to sell it. Today, I see 3 houses full of love built on this property, 4 wonderful children, 2 perfect grandchildren, and a family that is my greatest work of art. My story, said Sarah, is about gratitude. Gratitude for having found a partner who taught me that true love is about growing together, for raising children who became amazing people, and for living to see my grandchildren grow up in the same house where I raised my children. My story, said Leo, is about roots. For a long time I thought having roots meant being stuck, but I learned that roots give you strength to grow tall, security to face storms, and nourishment to fully blossom. My story, said Grace, is about belonging. I grew up without a close family, and when I met you all, I knew immediately I had found my place in the world. Thank you for welcoming me as a daughter from day one. My story, said Sam, is about legacy, not the legacy of money or status, but the legacy of values, of love for the land, of family connection. That's the legacy I want to pass on to my children. And my story, added Chloe, is about dreams come true. I always dreamed of being part of a large, close-knit family, working with sustainable agriculture, and raising my children in an environment of love and nature. You all made every one of my dreams a reality. On that special night, with 2 small children sleeping in their grandparents' arms and 4 young adults planning the future, Julian felt his life had achieved a completeness he never imagined possible. 5 years had passed since Sam's wedding. The property had become a small, prosperous and harmonious family community. Leo and Grace, now with 3 children, Eleanor had gained a little brother, Daniel, 2 years prior, had transformed their studio into an art school for local children. Kids from several neighboring towns would come on weekends to learn drawing and painting from the couple. Sam and Chloe, with a 2-year-old daughter named Lily, had expanded the property's agricultural production and created a family farming cooperative serving the entire region. Sarah's guesthouse remained one of the most sought-after rural destinations, and its restaurant had earned a star in a national food guide. And Julian, at 62, had become a respected figure not just regionally, but nationally. His paintings were sold in important galleries, but more importantly, he had become a symbol that it is possible to radically change one's life and find happiness in simplicity. One Sunday afternoon, as the whole family gathered for the weekly lunch at the main house, a tradition they kept religiously, Julian made an important announcement. "Everyone, I have a proposal for you." "What proposal?" they all asked, curious. "I'm thinking of writing a book telling our story, the story of how a lost man found his family and his true life in an abandoned house." "What a wonderful idea!" exclaimed Grace. "Our story could inspire other people to rethink their priorities." "Exactly. How many people live empty lives in big cities, not knowing that happiness can be found in simplicity, in family, in connection to the land?" "And what would the book be like?" asked Leo. "It would tell everything from the beginning. My arrival here thinking it would be a quick visit, meeting you all, the discoveries about the past, the decision to stay, the building of our family." "And how would it end?" asked Sam. "It would end with this very scene. 3 generations gathered around a table, in a house full of love on a prosperous property, celebrating not just material success, but especially the emotional and spiritual success we've achieved together." "I think you should write this book," said Sarah. "Our story proves it's never too late to start over, that family isn't just blood, that simplicity can be richer than opulence. And that true love transforms everything," added Grace. "Then it's decided. I'll write the book during the next winter, when I have more free time from painting." 6 months later, Julian had finished the manuscript for The Way Back, a journey of rediscovering what truly matters. The book recounted with honesty and emotion the entire journey of the family, from the initial meeting to the building of a thriving family community. The publisher who received the manuscript was enthusiastic about the project. "This is exactly the kind of story people need to hear today," said the editor. "In a time of so much urban stress, so much family disconnection, your story offers a real and inspiring alternative." The book launch was a special event at the property. Journalists, writers, and admirers came from various cities to meet the family and the place that had inspired such a touching story. During the launch event, Julian gave an emotional speech. "This book isn't about me. It's about all of us who one day lost our way and discovered it's never too late to find our way back home. Home isn't a physical place. It's where our heart finds peace. For me, home was this family, this land, this simple but fulfilling life we built together. The book became an immediate success. Within a few months it reached the bestseller lists, was translated into several languages, and sparked a movement of people rethinking their life priorities. Julian began receiving letters from readers all over the world, telling how the book had inspired changes in their lives. Executives who had left everything to get closer to their families, families who had moved to the countryside, people who had rediscovered forgotten values. "I never imagined our simple story could touch so many people," he said to Sarah one evening, while reading some of the letters they had received. "It's because our story isn't just ours. It's for everyone who has ever felt lost and dreamed of a more authentic life." 2 years after the book's launch, Julian was invited to give talks in several cities, but always with the condition that he wouldn't be away from the family for more than 3 days in a row. During one of these talks in New York City, he ran into his old business partner by chance. "Julian, I can't believe it's you," said the man, clearly surprised. "I read your book. What an incredible story." "How are you?" asked Julian, genuinely interested. "Professionally, well, the company grew a lot after you left. But personally, I'm on my 3rd marriage. My kids barely speak to me. My health is terrible from all the stress." "I'm sorry to hear that. You know what impresses me most about your story? It's that you had the courage to do what we all dream of, but never do." "What courage?" "The courage to admit you were wrong, that the life you built wasn't the life you wanted. The courage to start over completely." "It was never about courage," reflected Julian. "It was about necessity. I needed a life with meaning, and I found that in family." "Do you think it's still possible for someone my age? I'm 58. "Of course it's possible. I started my change at 42. The question isn't age, it's willingness." They talked for 2 hours. In the end, the old partner said, "Julian, thank you. Our conversation has given me a lot to think about. Maybe it's time for me to rethink my priorities too." On the trip back home, Julian thought about that encounter. How many men and women lived empty lives, accumulating material possessions but losing the true treasures: family, love, purpose, inner peace. When he arrived home, he found the whole family gathered on the porch waiting for him. The grandchildren ran to hug him. The children shared their news. Sarah had prepared his favorite meal. "How was the talk?" she asked. "Good, but the best part was coming home and finding you all here." "Dad always says that," Leo joked, "that no matter where you go, it's always best to come back home." "Because it's true," said Julian, sitting down in the rocking chair that had become his favorite spot. "They can offer me all the opportunities in the world. They can invite me to the most exotic places, but nothing compares to being here with you all." That evening, as they always did, they stayed on the porch talking late into the night. The children played in the backyard, the adults planned future projects, and Julian watched it all with a heart overflowing with gratitude. At 65, he had found not just a family, but a purpose that went beyond his own happiness. Through the book and the lectures, he was helping other people find their own ways back home. On a particularly special night, as they celebrated the 5-year anniversary of the book's release, Julian stood up to make a final toast. 25 years ago, what he said, his voice choked with emotion. "I returned to this house as a lost and bitter man. Today, I celebrate a life that has surpassed all my dreams. I not only found a family, but I helped inspire other families. I not only found happiness, but I learned that happiness multiplied is even greater." Everyone stood up to hug him. In the loving chaos of collective embraces, with grandchildren climbing onto his legs and children whispering words of love, Julian felt he had fulfilled the most important purpose of his life. He hadn't just built a successful company or painted recognized paintings. He had built a legacy of love that would extend for generations, in a house that had gone from a symbol of abandonment to a symbol of rebirth and hope. And when that night he retired to the room that had once been his parents', Julian said his prayer of gratitude while looking out the window at the 3 little lit-up houses where his children and grandchildren lived. He had found the treasure he had searched for his whole life without knowing. He had come home not just geographically, but emotionally, spiritually, completely. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of the story and where you're watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Julian made the right decision by abandoning his life in New York City? We would love to read your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.